Hello, Star Wars fans. Today we're going to take a look at Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, but also at Grand Admiral Thrawn and how I believe he is going to end up being the main villain of Mando Season 3 and then also a huge villain in the upcoming Ahsoka series, which of course will tie into Mandalorian. So let's dive right in and take a deep dive into Grand Admiral Thrawn and his impact on the Star Wars universe. All right, so Thrawn was actually created back in 1991. Now, when Disney bought Star Wars, they labeled anything that was like comics and novels and video games as quote-unquote legends, meaning we're not going to call them canon. You can still enjoy them, but they're not canon. Then thank goodness for Dave Filoni, who has slowly been integrating the characters from the legends into both the animated series like Clone Wars and Rebels, and now, of course, in live action like Mandalorian and Ahsoka. So anyway, this trilogy of novels came out in 1991. They took place in 9 ABY, similar to my earlier video that I did last week. I will try to keep in the lower left-hand corner in red the dates when we know what they are. And the reason the 9 ABY is interesting is that is the same time frame that Mandalorian Season 1 came out. Now, I don't know how much of these novels Filoni is going to directly refer to, but it still is really cool that he's bringing in Thrawn, and now we're finally going to get to see him in live action. So what do we know about Thrawn and his race? Well, his race is the Chiss. They're blue-skinned, near-humanoid sentient beings with blue skin and red eyes. And, of course, Thrawn is the most famous of that race. And they live in what's called the unknown regions. And that's probably a name given by the Empire and the Republic because they just don't know much about what's in the unknown regions. Notice I know it's a really busy map, but you can see the unknown regions there over on the left, on the west side of the galaxy. So if we look a little deeper into the unknown regions, we can see why they're calling it that, because it's really hard to map. There's supernova, black holes, gravity wells. It's just very dangerous. In fact, often you need a force-sensitive navigator if you want to even travel through the unknown regions. So it's pretty simple and clear to say that even Palpatine, as powerful as he was, didn't know much about what was happening within this area. All right, so Thrawn and Anakin meet during the Clone Wars. Unfortunately, not in Clone Wars episodes, but a recent novel about Thrawn has revealed that Anakin and Thrawn did meet. And it would have been around 19 BBY, so during the Clone Wars. And it was an important meeting because they both left, with some respect with each other, but most importantly, it let Thrawn know Anakin, and that will help him in his next encounter with the Empire, which, speaking of, is in 16 BBY. So now the Clone Wars are over, the Empire is taken over, and the prequel the prequel trilogy has completed of movies. So we're at 16 BBY, and Thrawn is brought before the Empire. In particular, the Emperor himself. But it helped that Thrawn knew who Skywalker was, and likewise, because Anakin had mentioned Thrawn to Palpatine, Palpatine knew Thrawn. So Palpatine knew that he was a very, very smart strategist, maybe one of the smartest that's ever lived. So he definitely wanted him involved in his empire. Also, Thrawn promised to give information about the unknown regions, which was very advantageous for Palpatine. So, yeah, it worked out very well for Thrawn. And in fact, over time, Thrawn rose into the ranks of the title of Grand Admiral. He is literally the only non-human that had a rank as high as Grand Admiral. So brilliant strategist, and a very, very important to the Palpatine and the Empire. So eventually, Thrawn was rewarded with command over the 7th Fleet, which, by the way, can I just say, man, the visuals in Clone Wars and in Bad Batch, etc., but in this case, Rebels, so beautiful, such amazing visuals. But so Thrawn got the 7th Fleet, and in particular, his flagship was the Imperial I-Class Star Destroyer Chimera, which, man, that thing is a monster. That is a monster. And again, amazing visuals. So also, now we're up to about 2 BBY, Thrawn proposed the development of the TIE Defender, which you can see an image of there. And in particular, he was going to initially manufacture them on Lothal and then move to mass production after that. One slight problem, however, is Lothal was the homeworld of a young Ezra Bridger, who, Ezra, brought in the Rebels, a Rebel faction, which we learn about in the Rebels series. By the way, if you've never seen the Rebels series, it's fantastic. You really do need to see it, and I think it's going to be so important for Mando and Ahsoka coming up. But that brought the Rebels and Ezra against Thrawn, many, many battles. I won't go into all of the story. That's in Rebels. However, the importance is the climax of Rebels involves the Purrgil, those hyperspace whales, attacking Thrawn's fleet. And we're right around 0 BBY, which is just before the Battle of Yavin, i.e. Episode 4 of the original trilogy. And why is that important? Because theoretically, had this 7th Fleet still been around, it's entirely possible the Rebels would not have won in the Battle of Yavin. So yeah, the Purrgils come, they just wreck his fleet pretty bad. And by the end of the Rebels series, Thrawn, Ezra, the Purrgils, and the entire 7th Fleet are taken away off to unknown areas. No one even knows where they went. So yeah, again, the theory is that had Thrawn's fleet not vanished, the Rebels probably wouldn't have won. So very important that they're gone during the time frame of basically all 3 movies in the original trilogy. All right, so Thrawn's return has already been hinted by the Purrgil Easter egg that we saw in Mando Season 3, Episode 2, because we didn't see Thrawn, obviously, but this was just a reminder of, oh yeah, I remember those things. So in case you forgot them, Filoni's like, no, these are important. So also worth mentioning, at the end of Rebels, in kind of the epilogue, Sabine Wren, I talked a lot about Sabine in the last video, so I'm sure you remember her, she painted a mural of all her Rebel companions, including the missing Ezra. Notice this, we're talking probably about 5 ABY, so maybe a year or so after the original trilogy. But yeah, she really is touched by the fact that Ezra has never been found during the entire time of the original trilogy. He was never found. So she basically vows that she's going to find him. And we know we're going to see a live action Sabine because in the trailer for Ahsoka, for her new series, it was teased. In fact, there's the mural again, and that's the live action Sabine standing there. So that's going to be awesome to see. And Sabine reunited at the end of the Rebels series with Ahsoka to hunt for Ezra Bridger. And of course, we see this then picking up, if you remember, in Season 2 of Mando, when Ahsoka is looking for Ezra and Thrawn, and is looking for any clues to him. So it's really exciting to actually hear the phrase Grand Admiral Thrawn said in live action. You knew this was coming. So we don't really know anymore, thanks to Favreau's kind of changing things around, what the ABY is, but notice I put 9 to 11 ABY. So this is 4 or 5 years after the end of Rebels and Sabine and Ahsoka teaming up to find Ezra. All right, so in that episode where Ahsoka is questioning to find where Thrawn is, the Magistrate and her HK-87 assassin droids had a major Easter egg that the 7th Fleet is back because, thanks to Reddit, who lightened this scene up again here, you can see the 7th Fleet emblem there. So that is Thrawn's emblem on those guards. So yeah, Thrawn is back. And believe me, he will be quite a force because his fleet was very powerful. He has a lot of officers with him, I'm sure. In fact, you have to wonder if Moff Gideon is working for Thrawn as well. So yeah, we're really going to see him back. In fact, are the TIE fighters part of the 7th Fleet? Remember those TIE fighters in Episode 3? I mean, there was a ton of them, a crazy number of them. So are they part of Thrawn's 7th Fleet? And again, what role does Moff Gideon play in the 7th Fleet? So lots going on with that. All right, brief pause on Thrawn, although this will probably lead back to him, I think. But we need to go back in time just a little bit to the Bad Batch to talk about how much cloning has been coming up. So Bad Batch, if you remember, hopefully you're watching it, it's really good, is around 19 to 18 BBY. So we're BBY at this point. And one of the cool things that Filoni did in Bad Batch is he's bringing things into canon again. And Mount Tantus was Legends up to this point. But it was a base where massive amounts of cloning were being done. And in fact, on Wikipedia, love Wikipedia, they have a schematic showing a cutaway of Mount Tantus. And notice there in the center, the cloning chamber. I mean, pretty much it was a giant mountain where they were doing massive cloning. That was the main purpose. So pretty wild, pretty wild. And we know that Nala Se was brought to this mountain to use the cloning skills from Kamoa. All right, so lots going on with cloning. And notice the officers there, the cloning officers, slowly working on something. We don't really know what. We know they want Omega, that they can sense that she's a valuable part of this whole puzzle. But here's what's really cool. Look at their costumes, their outfits, and look at Dr. Pershing's outfit. Yeah, that is not by accident, obviously. There's no way that's an accident. So we basically have Bad Batch and Mandalorian tying directly together. So if you're not watching Bad Batch, you need to start watching it, because I think it's going to be more and more important. But so Bad Batch is happening again 19 to 18 BBY, and then some 25, 30 years later, in 9 ABY, we have Dr. Pershing doing what he's doing. And you got to wonder if that scientist there on the right, if she wasn't patterned after maybe even a real-life actress who's probably 30 years older, but so that she can appear in live action in Mandalorian. Wouldn't that be cool if we actually see her showing up in Mandalorian? Wow, craziness. All right, so we have already been seeing some cloning experiments going on in Mandalorian. So there is no doubt that this is building to something big. And in the Legends, even, around this time frame, there was cloning going on. And yes, that is a severed hand, but it's not just any severed hand. It was Luke's severed hand, because they used his DNA, his genetics, to try to create Force-sensitive clones. So yes, this is all building up to explain the something, the somehow, in Somehow Palpatine Returned. Oscar Isaac looked like he did not want to deliver that line and was not happy about it. But hey, here's the good news, Oscar. Slowly, thanks to Filoni and Favreau, we are going to understand the somehow, and it's actually going to make sense. I never really had a big issue that Palpatine came back in the sequel trilogy, but it was really sudden and completely unexplained and out of nowhere. So I'm excited that they're building that lore and pulling in Legends along the way to do it. So pretty cool. It's also worth noting that Elia Kane, who was obviously working for Moff Gideon in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, now is a part of the re-entry program with the New Republic and is trying to get a hold of cloning materials of Dr. Pershing's. Very, very interesting. And knowing that Elia Kane is, was working for Moff Gideon in Season 2 of Mandalorian, and now in Season 3 she's far along in that re-entry program, I am beginning to think there must be a gap, a pretty big gap in time between Season 2 and Season 3. It seems really clear. So it is worth noting really quickly, if she looks familiar, that's why. Same actress. She also played Jen Torra. Yeah, so she's now done Star Wars and MCU. Pretty cool. But so I think that Favreau may really have been right when he said in his recent interview, we know that he's, Grogu, been rescued and spent many years with the Mandalorian, went back with Luke, and now we've been 2 years apart from him there training. I think Favreau is probably right. There has to be around 2 years between Season 2 and Season 3. Otherwise, Kane wouldn't have moved so far through the program. So if I go back to this little timeline I'm trying to keep track of, I think we got to move it to 9 to 13 ABY. I don't know where to put Boba Fett, although it really feels like Boba Fett is towards the tail end of that time frame. So I'm going to make it 13, but I guess maybe it's 12. But I do think there's a good 4 years between the beginning of Season 1 and how far we are now into Season 3. So very interesting. All right, so one other quick thing to mention about the episode. Does the armor know Bo-Katan? I mean, the simple answer is yes. She addressed her as Bo-Katan, knew who she was immediately. I mean, does she really know her? Is there something going on here? If you remember, Bo-Katan and Satine. Why did they make name Sabine and Satine? That's just really cruel, Filoni. That's really cruel. But anyway, Bo-Katan was sisters with Satine Kryze, if you remember from the previous video. Well, there actually is a third sister. Believe it or not, they met their nephew. We meet the nephew, Corky Kryze. And yes, that is a really cruel thing to do to your child. Who would name their child Corky Kryze? They're basically naming him, I want to get beat up in school, please. But anyway, there's a nephew named Corky Kryze, but we never meet that third sister. What if the third sister is the armor? What if Bo-Katan and the third sister left Mandalore and left Satine to go and form Death Watch, and then at some point the two sisters broke off, one forming the Children of the Watch, the armor, and the other basically staying with the Death Watch concepts, Bo-Katan. Because it really seems like the armor does not like Bo-Katan. Yes, she's brought her back in. She bathed in the waters, so you're part of the convert. But I don't think she likes her. I don't think she trusts her. Very interesting. So maybe, just maybe, good old Corky Kryze is going to be vital to what's going on. Interesting, right? Very interesting. And then I must say, one of the things I love about Star Wars is their callbacks. Some of them being epic, and episode 3 had an epic one. Oh my goodness. Love that joke. Love it. Even if the Mon Calamarian doesn't get the joke, because clearly he doesn't get it. He's got that look on his face like, was this funny? I don't see why this is funny. It's like, oh, it's very funny. You may not get it, but trust me, it's very funny. So chef's kiss to Johnny Favreau for this one. All right, so there you go. That is the history of Thrawn, the cloning that's going on and how that's all going to tie together, and even a little fun thing thrown in about the armor and Bo-Katan. So don't forget, we do have a Discord server. The Star Wars chatter is picking up more and more by the day. Love to have you join us. I will put a pinned comment with this video so you can join the Discord server. And in the meantime, like this video if you don't mind. You can check out more content. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we can all continue to enjoy Mandalorian Season 3.